Okay. I want to talk about Bram Stoker's Dracula and specifically how I think it sucks. And let me preface this by saying that remember that I am punching upwards at a literary legend, you know? So take, what I say with a grain of salt. Like, I'm not going to hold any punches, It's a literary legend. And I don't think it gets nearly enough of the shit that it deserves. Because I don't think it's really all that good. Um, like I will say, Bram Stoker, I think, is, technically speaking, a really good writer, in terms of like prose, style, voice, and everything. Great, amazing. But in terms of like storytelling and the way he carries his purple prose is just, I mean, it's pretty awful. I I've listened to Bram Stoker's Dracula 7 times, I think. Like I listened to it like on, road trips or just, when I was busy doing other things or like right before bed. And I've read it twice and like I pretty much did not retain any of it. It was so difficult. I had to watch a synopsis of it later and watch the movie, the ones with Keanu Reeves and Gary Oldman. And it just it was so hard to focus on it. Like I mean, anytime we start doing anything interesting, like I think it's Renfield, and they're talking about oh he's eating flies, and I'm like okay cool, I'm starting to get into it. I'm like cool, Renfield's eating flies, how interesting, you know, and then he just cuts away to another long monologue, just going on and on about oh the humanity and how will I ever take control of my humanity and my soul and I have to be careful of fucking Dracula and oh no. And it's just like, oh, okay, dude, I get it. And then not to mention just like, oh my god, like Bram Stoker, dude, I get it. Okay, cool. I've seen trees before. Please shut the fuck up. Move on. I get it. I understand what a tree looks like. Let's go. Let's jump into this. I don't need you to describe trees for an entire chapter. Let's do this. Um, the characters are also just like again, like I really have a hard time retaining anything from it. So, excuse me if I'm wrong anywhere. Correct me, please. Because the only reason I'm even making this video is I desperately want to love, Bram Stoker's Dracula. I got it suggested to me so many times. At this point, I feel like I should have Stockholm syndrome, um, and I just don't. So please, turn me on to Bram Stoker's Dracula if you can. Also, sorry I keep specifically saying Bram Stoker's Dracula. I feel like this is the, like in the movie, this is the end. He's like, thanks, James Franco. I feel like that. But, like there's so many iterations of Dracula. It feels necessary to specify which one I'm talking about. Um, but the characters, like, so Van Helsing is pretty cool, but he's kind of like a walking ex machina. Maybe like a van walking. No, that's the second it started coming out of my mouth, I realized how much I hated that joke. That was such a stupid joke. He's like a walking ex machina. It just feels like he always has like something for the occasion. It's just ridiculous. Um, Jonathan Harker, I feel like is a cool starting character, maybe, and then like that's about it. And then like not to mention, Dracula's just like not scary, like at all. Like, I don't. So first, his thing, right? Like, okay, so like he does certain things, like crawling on the walls, right? So that's creepy for sure. That's definitely creepy. Being creepy is not the same thing as being scary, though. It's completely different. It's like if you saw Spider-Man in the beginning before, he's Spider-Man crawling on the walls. You wouldn't like shit your pants in pure terror that you're seeing a person crawling on the walls. You're just like, oh, yo, that's fucked up. But like that's about it. I don't like It's creepy, not scary. Completely different things. Um, I think where he is pretty scary is like so like he transforms into a wolf at one point, I think. So like that's pretty scary. But like that's essentially just a skinwalker. You know, like we're just in skinwalker territory there, which doesn't feel fair. Like you're just like it's just a skinwalker. Controlling animals, that's pretty scary. The hypnotizing, scary. Like how do you even like combat that? It's pretty difficult. And then the I think he turns into mist at one point. He just turns into just straight up fucking mist. That's terrifying. And like that's about it. Okay. So those are like basically his powers that like really mean anything. But then his boons, right? Like the man can't stand wafers and garlic. You're telling me nobody that went up against Dracula was like a fan of garlic bread? Like that's a fucking lie. Garlic bread is amazing. Everybody loves garlic bread. These people definitely were chowing down on garlic bread. These people had wafers. You know how easy it is to get wafers, crosses, steaks, holy water, and then not to mention one of his weaknesses is just half of all fucking time daylight. These are encumbrances maybe to go up against. Not really that difficult. Like I don't mean to be like all like oh yeah I'm such a badass all high and mighty, but like I definitely feel like I could take Dracula. You know, I'm like obviously not like in a one-on-one fight, but like any sort of preparation, easy takedown, no fucking question. Like you just like put fucking wafers on your neck. These things aren't that difficult. Um, let's see what else. Oh, wild roses. Like you know how abundant wild roses are when you're out in the woods. They're fucking everywhere. These aren't like that difficult. And then you just stab them with like a stake. Again, really not that difficult. Um, it's just like I don't get it. I don't get. I would love to get it. I really, really don't get it. Um, it's kind of just like I imagine like if Borat was a vampire, right? Like that's Dracula to me. Right? Like okay, cool, yeah, has a bunch of scary powers, but like at the end of the day, man, it's just Borat. Like this is comical. You can't have Borat as a vampire and then be like, oh, this is horror. No, it's just comical. It's funny, you know. You see this dude that's afraid of wafers and he's crawling on the walls like a lizard. That's comedy. That's not horror. And like your one job was to be you had two jobs. One of which was to be horror. The other one is to tell a good story, which I don't think you did. When all of like the majority of your book is just you going on these really long monologues, and like maybe this was scary at the time. Maybe it's like a Frankenstein situation where like at the time everybody's like, oh man, this is peak horror, and then you move into the modern age and you realize that nobody had any back then had any idea what horror really was. Um, but yeah, it's not a man that's afraid of wafers that you can easily stab in the heart, have to invite into your home, has a thing with roses and just like any sort of sacred religious artifacts. So the other thing is that I'm just going to touch on this really quick because I do think it's kind of funny. It's never really like talked about all that much, but I think it's funny how like in the Bram Stoker universe there just like is like a confirmable um, Catholic or Christian, I guess just Abrahamic deity, just like anything that's God affiliated is a weakness of his. So that just is undeniable proof that there is indeed a God, which I think is really cool and weird. Which kind of also brings me to my next topic, which is that like the only people that I could see being afraid of this is like, like white homophobic Christian Abrahamic religious Bible thumpers. It's what is scary about Dracula? He's a rich sugar daddy, eccentric sugar daddy that lives up in a mansion. Like that's not scary. And not to mention that this rich sugar daddy, he's gonna bite you. That's what you have to be afraid of. He's going to bite you. Like that's fucking cool. I'm okay with that. Like so my point with the whole like homophobic thing, like imagine if Dracula was a woman, right? a rich, eccentric older woman that lives in a mansion and is going to bite you, like you would be like, no, that's hot. You know that's hot. I know that's hot. It's hot. There's nothing scary about that. Um, so like the only people who would be afraid of Dracula is like, Bible thumpers. Um, but like I think honestly, I feel like, you know, not to be like I could fix him, but I feel like any normal, moderate sinner would totally get along with Dracula. Like, if you're telling me Ronnie James Dio and Dracula wouldn't be best friends? They absolutely would. Like any moderate sinner would be like totally cool with Dracula. He'd be like, yeah, whatever, I don't give a shit. You know? He's not gonna see Ronnie James Dio in a dark alleyway and be like, yeah, I'm gonna bite him. No. Dracula would be like, no, it's Ronnie James Dio. That's really cool. We're both sinners. You know? But to like Christians and Catholics, sure, that's scary. I can understand that completely. You're like, oh no, here's a sinner. Here's, a heathen, this ungodly, unholy person. So sure, that aspect I can see where the horror comes from, especially back in the time. I have no idea when Bram Stoker Dracula takes place. I assume Victorian era, maybe, probably. Sorry if that's wrong. I'm gonna go with Victorian era. Um, but like you had some Victorian boys go in and take him down, and that sounds like a pretty doable monster to kill. That doesn't really sound. Also, doesn't he like? Isn't there like a lot of the book where it's just like business finances or like property values or something like that? Like what? Like these people. Like, of course they needed Van Helsing. And he was like probably the only one pulling any of the legwork. Like any normal person nowadays would probably be able to take on Dracula. It's not scary. Okay, so and then here's the part where I'm probably going to lose a lot of people if I even had any of you. And again, please take everything I say with a grain of salt. Like I'm not saying don't read Bram Stoker's Dracula. This is definitely a book that's going to be for a lot of people, with its style and prose being so strong, and like it's just not my cup of tea. Like I want a book that has stuff going on, and I can follow it. I'm like, okay, we're doing this now. Cool, we're doing this. Like I don't mind some introspection here and there, but when we're just going on and on and on about these different things without actually getting anywhere. But so like the thing is I I really love Twilight. I think Twilight's amazing. I love how cheesy and stupid it is. It's amazing. It's a literary masterpiece. I do see like Stephanie Meyer's problem with like her voice and prose, but she was also, she was young. I'm not gonna fault Stephanie Myers for not being the literary master that Bram Stoker was. And she has other good stuff which nobody ever gives her any credit for, which is like The Host, which I think is amazingly written. But like she never gets any credit for that, which is funny because I think she even mentions that she'll always be known for doing Twilight. But The Host is amazingly written. Like she grew up and like got better at her craft. But anyways, okay, so I love Twilight. I think it's great. I love the movies. I love the books. I obviously see the problems with it. Okay, but like the Twilight vampires are actually terrifying. It's just never written that way because it's a romance book. It's just like it's vampires, sure, but they're watered down to be romance, and that doesn't deserve any fault. That's like it's like when people they do those edits, where they'll take something that's supposed to be like a comedy or something. Like they'll take Friends and they'll take Ross, and then they'll change like the music and everything to make it seem like it's a horror, which is really funny and works. But like if you did the same thing with Twilight, like that would work. But like it's written as a horror, or not. Sorry. I'm also rambling a lot. I'm trying to keep it, concise, but I do have ADHD like a motherfucker. It's written as a romance, but I don't believe that it deserves any fault for being a romance. Like these are watered down vampires to be romance, Dracula, on the other hand, is supposed to be horror, and but like it's not like Dracula's that weeaboo kid in school that's just doing the fucking most You know, he's like doing jump kicks in the hallways and shit. And you're like, dude, like what are you doing? Stop, you know? Like Dracula's just doing the absolute most, you know? He's not trying to be, you know, um romance, you know? So it getting fault for being romance is just like I think it's really unfair. Whereas Dracula's doing the most and he's not really scary at all, which is where I feel like it really deserves a lot of the shit that it gets. And especially since like I grew up listening to all these like fuck ass Gen X and boomers being like, "Oh, Twilight ruined the vampire, Twilight ruined the vampire," and like I never read Bram Stoker and I never watched the Dracula movie until recently, so I genuinely thought that was valid criticism. I was like, oh, "Okay, yeah, cool, I can understand that Bram Stoker, like you know, Stephanie Meyer and Twilight ruined the vampire, you know, because they're you know whatever." And then I go and I fucking read Dracula, and like it's not scary at all. What exactly did the Twilight vampires ruin? Okay, because they're much more horror. If you wrote these things as horrifying creatures, and you also sidestep the fact that they you know sparkle like disco balls in the sunlight, um, which is not nearly as fuck ass comical as crawling on the walls like Spider Man. Like I would yeah whatever. Um, if you took the Twilight vampires and you wrote them as horror, remember that like the first victim that we get in Twilight, this old man is ripped to shreds so bad that they're like, oh shit, we know that an animal did this, right? Like an animal did this, but it's so bad that we have no idea what animal could have possibly done this. Like they ripped this poor man to shreds. So like they're very skilled hunters. Like they will track you down and hunt you and then just rip you apart. But not only that, they're like basically made of stone. And the only way to kill them is if you rip off their heads and then quickly light them on fire. Okay, so like the only way that I could possibly see me taking down a Twilight vampire is this I somehow coerced one to like come near me with a backhoe, and then I use the big arm thingy bucket to like slam down and rip off their heads, and then I jump out of the backhoe really quickly, and then I set them on fire. Like that is the only way that I could possibly think of like taking down a Twilight vampire. But these things are also pretty much cougars, you know, where I cougars probably not when I just went around talking about sugar daddies, cougars probably not the term that she used. Mountain lions. These vampires essentially just like fucking mountain lions, right? Like you're never gonna be able to take one down. They're cunning, they're quick, they're fast, they're strong. Like they're just like, what are you gonna do up against a cougar? It's just gonna maul you to death. Um, and then like if that wasn't bad enough, they're fucking mountain lions with superpowers. So if you did manage to like do any of this, it's gonna like read your mind and like know what you're doing, or see the fucking future, or it's going to just out of nowhere just fill you with immeasurable amount of pain into your body without you even just instantly just bam, you're just filled with pain for no reason. Or they'll just like send a tornado at you. Like what do you like there's nothing you could possibly do against a Twilight vampire, which I think makes them terrifying. And then you always have these people that would be like, oh, Dracula would beat the shit out of like Edward Cullen, which like you realize we're talking about a fucking high school student, right? Like Edward goes to high school, and Bram Stoker or not Bram Stoker, Dracula. Um, I don't know if it was canon when the movie had Gary Oldman do that whole like crusade war in the beginning. But like if that's you know, I've also seen that kind of sort of thing in other iterations of Dracula, so maybe that's like you know, I think that's legitimate. Um, so you have Dracula who's been around for like thousands of years and is like a war veteran going up against Edward Cullen, and you think and you're like, yeah, you could definitely beat him. Um, which like maybe that's fair, but like what the fuck is your point? You're talking about a war veteran going against a high school student. Like at like like if Dracula wins, it's like wow, okay, cool, you beat Edward Cullen. But if he loses, it's like wow. Well, the other thing is that like I'm fairly certain that Edward Cullen would. Also, Edward Cullen's a vegan, pretty much, you know. So like also not like the best. He's a vegan for being romance, you know. If you take like any of the other vampires who are actually you know vicious killers that hate humanity, like there's no fucking chance. But even like Edward Cullen, okay, Dracula would have to rip Edward Cullen's head off and then light him on fire really quickly. Whereas Edward Cullen would be like he would have all the bonuses that a human would. You know, he could just put wafers on himself. He could wear crosses. He could drink some fucking holy water. He can eat garlic bread, and then he could just go to battle with Dracula, and then just stab him in the stick with a heart. Like, it's really not that difficult to kill Dracula. If they were maybe going in like a 1v1 fight, you know, like a brawl, then sure, I would put my money on Dracula, lay him up. He would absolutely probably dominate that. You know, they're like equally fast, equally strong. And then you have Dracula who has like combat ability, experience, right? Probably, I think. So like that in that capacity, sure, maybe probably. And Dracula's powers are probably like he's too quick probably to for Edward's like I don't know how this became like a thing about me going on fucking Twilight's dick. But I think about monsters a lot. It's my job to think about monsters. So like I think about monsters a lot, and that includes, you know, these kinds of things. But I don't think yeah, I'm gonna stop with the whole like facing them off against each other. I'm just pointing out like it used to it. I agreed with it before because I didn't know any better, and it was like, yeah, they ruined vampires and Dracula would win. But now having read it, I'm like, what the fuck are you people smoking? Like, what? Like, are you outside of your fucking mind? When you thought that Dracula, a person who got beat by fucking humans, was going to somehow win against an immortal creature that could read your thoughts? Are you fucking crazy? Are you outside your goddamn mind? In no world is that humanly possible whatsoever. You are absolutely insane if you think that that was a matchup that was going to pay off. Absolutely no way. I think that might have been my last point. I'm sorry I rambled there a lot. I promise you, I genuinely really want to love Bram Stoker's Dracula. But it's just, I mean, god damn. Like I said, I really couldn't like pay attention to it. We would like start being interesting, and then he would start off explaining trees, or like, you know, the wilderness and the humanity of it all, and his immortal soul, and how he fears for, you know, all these different things. And it's just like, oh my god, dude, I get it. So if like you have, you know, recommendations on like maybe I should need to start at a different chapter or like something else, I would love to know it genuinely. Or if there's maybe like a better way to read it, you know, some way of like going into it or something like that, please. I really want to love Bram Stoker's Dracula. I really, really do. But as it stands right now, I just like I couldn't get into it, and he just sounds really comical to me. Like, I don't know. Again, take everything I'm saying with a grain of, like, I'm punching up at a literary legend, you know, so like I'm not gonna pull any punches. You know, I definitely could have been nicer to it, but like it's Bram Stoker's Dracula. It doesn't need anybody defending it. Yeah, and that's all.